Welcome back to another episode of the Block Runner Podcast. I'm your host, William, always here with your co-host, Iman.
What's going on, dude?
And on the sticks, we got TJ.
Hello.
And I want to welcome back Jake Gallen, CEO of Emblem Vault. Thank you for joining us again, Jake.
Dude, how many people have you ever had back as the second guest? Am I among the elite of the Block Runner Pod guests?
Oh, absolutely. There's very few people we've had back.
Yeah, I can't even think too much about that. I mean, we've made offers. It's like, hey, tell me you guys want to come back,
No.
Doors are always open, but it doesn't happen, dude. But
we did it. We did it, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go. I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, we're excited to have you back on because, the last time we talked, I think was during like the beginning stages of the intersection between crypto and AI and such. And obviously back in that initial like awareness stage, things were very bullish. It was in the middle of like, meme coin mania and such, pumped off on mania. So
that's right.
There's just a ton of like positive sentiment. A lot of people really saw like some real important unlocks into the future. And you were one of the first ones to really talk about, the UI UX improvements on the horizon with AI and agents that can kind of like service ourselves.
That's right.
Through different like, facets of what we're accustomed to, but because we're veterans, we're comfortable with these UI challenges.
That's not hard. You just have to bridge twice and swap 3 times.
Yeah,
that's not hard.
It's like, what do you mean people can't do this stuff?
Yeah.
Right? But then you're like, no. It's like there's real people out there that will not do this stuff. And so maybe AI is going to come in here and bring absolve some of this difficulty a bit, right? So it's been what, 4 or 5 months of development since then. So if you can, just give us where you're at as far as with Agent Hussle, where you perceive the DeFi AI sector as a whole.
It's been probably about 4.5, 5 months. So we launched Agent Hussle V1 on December 31st, and that was just the AI itself that had a memory attached to it. Actually, as of today, at the time of this recording, Grok just announced that they integrated memory to that AI. And then earlier in the week, ChatGPT also announced that they're adding memory. So we were really kind of 4.5 months ahead of the larger models. Obviously, they have much more infrastructure to add to. But the AI, I would say the AI trends really started taking off towards the beginning of Q4 last year. So around October, right, you had kind of like Truth Terminal popped up, and then AI XBT, and you had like Zerebro and kind of all of these other ones that kind of took off. And during that time, it was really all about, I guess they called them KOL bots. To me, they're more just like social bots. Ultimately, as we were building, we felt like that trend was going to die pretty fast and that there would only be a few winners. And turns out now, fast forward 6 months, and it seems like AI XBT is literally the only one standing among those, maybe a few other smaller ones, but an alpha bot, it seems to be kind of the first use case. But what was kind of working underneath that was this idea of DeFi AI. At the time, it didn't really have a name, but we were building a wallet for AI agents. They're essentially just smart wallets because they're API based. So you can feed the API to the LLM so that they can interact with it. And we had this like really big aha moment where we were like, oh, wow. So if I can feed an agent a wallet, then we can use its context and its inference to then perform transactions. And as we started to build, we started realizing that there were a few other teams who started doing the same thing in terms of Wayfinder, Griffin, Heyanon, and Banker, I would say, and us are kind of like the top 5, I would consider, at least in terms of users. And ultimately, when you think of DeFi AI, people just think of, AI performing swaps or AI performing kind of really mundane transactions like bridging. But for us, what we found out was that users actually sit and talk to the LLM a lot more than they actually perform transactions. So some stats for us, we released our V2, which was Agent Hussle with all of these DeFi features on March 17th. So actually about a month from today. We get about 300 prompts an hour. We have about 500 weekly active users and about 200,000 in trading volume in about a month. So it's not like a crazy amount, but what we're seeing is people are using the agent in very small amounts of trading, $50 trades, $20 trades, to really kind of understand where the edge is.
Right.
And what was the real big aha moment for us, at least where we found our edge, is that because Agent Hussle has a memory and he remembers your conversations and your on-chain transactions, he can improve your strategies. And so what people ended up doing is they ended up using him to create trading strategies because he could read the volume and data on chain. So people are using him to form. Right now, the main use case is reading token data and finding out basically what are the runners of the day, and then building some sort of like momentum-based trading strategy where he finds the tokens and buys the token. And then the user has to right now exit on their own. But the next step for us is where he is finding it, buying it, and selling it for you based off of this trading strategy that you create. And kind of final note here is as we see some of these other teams starting to build, some are kind of building more towards advanced trading. This is kind of like what Hayanon's doing, where they're integrating staking and lending and derivative tradings and such. It's a little bit more of an advanced kind of feature, where Griffin is more of kind of, I guess they're trying to be like a super app of some nature. And then you have Banker that found their niche within what's called social trading, where you could basically, I think how they had it is they assigned every Twitter account a wallet. And so on Twitter, you could say, hey, send Jake, 1,000 Banker, whatever it is. And then it just sends the money to that wallet that's assigned. And then you go and claim the wallet. And you can do kind of these like DeFi stuff. And the last one is Wayfinder, which was the most popular one of recently. Mm-hmm. They've built these things that's called pathways, which you have to do as you're building DeFi AI. It's like essentially, integrating a bridge into the LLM, where if I want to move Solana from Solana to Base, somebody has to build that bridge. And so they're basically incentivizing users to build these what's called pathways using their token and then collateralizing it, where if you stake prompt, then the user, whatever the activity is, a portion of that goes to the builder and then a portion of it goes to kind of the stakers. But ultimately, all of these platforms are kind of building towards the same direction. They've kind of just started in kind of different at different points. And it's ultimately to use AI to completely replace the user experience, where instead of having to click buttons and move things around in a 20-step process, you basically just talk to the LLM and they help configure, whatever that strategy is for you.
So you mentioned strategies. Like how do you develop a strategy with the AI? Do you just like have a conversation with it, or is it an option strategy, or like how do you develop that strategy?
Honestly, really just talking to him like a human. Because we built a memory in him and we kind of humanized him a little bit, he's a little bit more playful than just kind of like this binary, zeros and one kind of response. He had some personality, some fluff, and he gives you some suggestions. And so if you go to Agent Hussle and you say, hey, I want to create a trading strategy, he'll give you a few options and he'll say, well, do you want to dive into swapping? Do you want to dive into LPs? Do you want to dive into the pump fund trenches? And most people, I would say the large majority right now, are people identifying newer tokens that have been created within the last few days and trying to catch that upside. And the most popular one is what's called a momentum-based strategy. And people have been creating these differently. Some of them are a little bit more simplistic as a one-sentence prompt. And some other ones are more complex and more traditional, where at one point, I actually had no idea that Hussle even could even understood trading charts and how to use them. And there's some users who are telling him to read the MACD and the Stotch crossover and the Fibonacci retracement and how it applies to these tokens. Whereas other people are doing more kind of price action, where it's, hey, can you give me 5 tokens that have X amount of volume or seem to be catching what you would consider a momentum-based trend? And then give me 4 or 5 take profit kind of areas of it. And he'll throw up the suggestions. And on the other side of it, you could do the social based one, which we do live streams multiple times a week to kind of showcase this stuff. Where last week we were testing out a strategy where we said, read all the Solana market cap data within the last 48 hours, categorize the tokens by their social trends, and then give us the market cap of them. And what it turned out was at the time, there was this token called furification that was popular. This was like early last week. And ultimately furries was like the popular meme coin of the day, which was like a $4 or $5 million market cap. And then he kind of listed all of the 5 new ones by these like social memes. And from there, you know, that's very powerful because one of our next features is which we're working on right now is going to be the ability to launch pump fund tokens. So you could use this AI to basically identify the social trend and then have him launch, you know, token derivatives to play in kind of the meme coin game.
Wow.
So the furries, was that the trend where everybody was giblifying their images and then they were furifying their images? Is that the connection?
It's like companies making their logos furry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that was exactly it. So he's really good, and Adam, I've learned to stop fading him. Whenever we come in and say, give us the first 5, or give us, you know, 5 tokens that'll potentially do a 2x within 24 hours. The first one he gives is always right. And we always try to go much deeper and stuff, but he's really good at momentum based stuff. And we have some traders who are hitting, you know, multiple 100% per day or per week, but they're using smaller amounts right now. It's like the highest size I think I've seen is like 3 or 4 SOL in a trade, because people are still getting used to it.
Yeah.
But what everyone's waiting for us is this idea of what's called conditional based trading or automated trading, where because he's so good at finding and buying, sometimes it's hard to sell, right? Because if you buy and sell through an LLM, to do one transaction is much slower than just clicking a button and performing it. So we have all these kind of side buttons in the platform. That's like a traditional model. But when you have them doing multi-step transactions, that's where it's more efficient. So if you say something like, find me the meme coin runner of the day, that will potentially give me a 2x in the next 24 hours. Once you find it, buy it and sell it at an 80% price increase. So then you can actually, what we call away from keyboard trading, and it can just kind of automate it. That's what we're building towards, maybe like a month or 2 away from that. And I think that's really where it gets fun. I think Haydon also has noted that they're attempting to build something like this as well. But it ultimately, specifically on the what you call the trenches on Solana, I think it's going to be completely radicalized by AI. Like instead of having to sit there on Photon every day, you just come in and talk to an AI and they do all the analysis for you. So you don't have to look through it. He just gives you the top 5 or 10. And then from there, you know, you're kind of 80% or 90% of the way there. And you could kind of make different assessments and trade-offs by analyzing the information that they give you.
Is that why it's more difficult to sell? Is that you have to make a determination or essentially wait for like an 80% upside? If that's like if that's the initiative for the AI is like it has to wait. Is that why it's more difficult?
Right now, I'd say there's kind of a few things. So we built Agent Hussle in a way to where you have this LLM on the right-hand side, and then on the left-hand side, you have this traditional model. So literally like a swap module like you see on Jupiter, LP situation, pump fund with the trenches moving up and down, your wallet balance. So we've put buy and sell buttons next to your balances. So if you are right now, it's kind of like an intermediary where if he's finding and buying it, but he can't automatically sell it yet. And if it's too slow to say, hey, sell through the LLM because it takes like 40 seconds.
I see.
That 80% could be gone, right? Sure. So people are finding and buying with the LLM, and then they're hitting the manual sell button on the left-hand side so it can sell in a few seconds.
I see.
Obviously, you want to automate that. But then once you do have this automated strategy, you could do very complex things like I was testing this out and I posted it on my Twitter account where I was testing out our dollar cost averaging, where I told him, I said, find the meme coin runner of the day. And then once you identify it, place 2 DCA bids in 15% below where the market price is. And he did that and both of them hit and it went up like 80% within like 10 minutes.
Wow.
So you can get really creative. The one thing I will note here, which I think is going to happen over the next year or two, what we're building and what some of these other DeFi AI platforms are building is essentially what Wall Street's had for 20, 30 years. And
Yes.
it's what a lot of the developers in the crypto space have had for a decade. You know, maybe not as sophisticated as an AI, but these, developers can build 5-10 bots who basically do the same thing. So now you're essentially giving retail the same tools that both of these, that quantitative hedge funds have had for a long time and what developers have had. And so now it's going to be in the hands of everyone probably within the next year. And really then the edge is eliminated from, the technical perspective. I think then it comes down to your prompt and creativity is where traders are going to find their edge here probably at some point next year.
Yeah. What would you say is the difference between a bot and an AI agent that trades?
Context is the difference. And you'll hear this word context a lot in the AI space. Essentially what it is taking multiple bits of information and making a predictive calculation based off of that. Bots do that. And they are pretty similar to AI. The AI I would say is probably packaged a little bit more tightly. Whereas a bot, you have, they're very static. It's like this one bot does this one thing over and over and over again, based off of these few things. Whereas with an AI, kind of how it works it is this, and this is the most simplistic way I could describe it. So with AI, you have something that's called toolkits or toolboxes. Each toolbox is something completely different. So there's like a swap toolbox, an LP toolbox, pump fund toolbox, balances toolbox, etc.
Yep.
And within these toolboxes, essentially there's two things that are in it. There's a few, again, simplifying this down. You have an aggregation of APIs that are inside of it. And then you have this kind of like list of commands, this like kind of like instructions for the AI. So whenever you tell an LLM, hey, find me the runner of the day and then, buy it, essentially they have to access multiple toolboxes. So he has to access kind of like this analytics toolbox, look at the instructions based off of the input that you get them, goes down, pulls all the information from the API, and then he'll look into the balances toolbox, see what your balance is, and then kind of put it all together.
I see.
And then they'll execute it, right? So there's a lot more kind of that's going on that they're sorting through. And I think this is why Agent Hussle is the most powerful AI of all that I've seen, is because Shannon has just been in the AI space for 20 years between bots and AI, that he's been doing this for a long time, especially in kind of the gaming sector where he was building pathways in the mid 2000s to farm and gain currencies in like World of Warcraft and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's really what I've learned is really what it comes down to. If you have a developer who is in the gaming world and doing this kind of stuff, building pathways is something they've been doing for decades at this point. It's just now applying it to on-chain, and it's also very expensive to do.
What has MCP done for Agent Hussle? Have you guys looked into using it?
We haven't accessed it yet. We're kind of still in the building stages. What an MCP is, at least from my understanding, it's like a new version of an API.
Yep.
So it's a way that an AI agent can interface with, whatever the MCP server is. Like I just saw one that Maestro put out was for Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So you can plug in the AI to this MCP server to get data off of Bitcoin. And we are going to move into Bitcoin over the next few months, but it's still fairly new. We're still in these kind of early stages where we're building. At the time of this recording, by the end of the week, we'll have order limits, DCA, and pump fund token launches available. And then we're going to be building a copy trader bot as well that people are really interested in. And that leads us into kind of this next era of automated trading and MCP servers and having Agent Hussle the ability to interact with web pages, which also offers kind of a unique layer of creativity.
Yeah.
And from there, it really, our users are going to determine what they think is best. We are also going to be changing our business model here over the next month or so. Right now with Agent Hussle, it's basically free, right? There's no subscription costs, there's no token gate, anything like that. Whereas a lot of these other ones have subscriptions or token gates or a combination of both. We were lucky and fortunate that our users and community found the use case within the first like 5 or 6 days of launch, where sometimes if you launch a protocol, it could take years. So we were kind of fortunate that we had a direction to build. And so now we're kind of really just pursuing that. And then also I've learned how expensive, I mentioned that before, but I'm not joking, where when you're using kind of more superior models, the inference costs are really, really high. And so even having 500, active weekly users the cost can get into the mid thousands per week based off of inference costs, depending on how you scale the back end and things like that. And so that's what we're looking into.
Yeah, not only that, I mean, you're mentioning how you have 500 users, but they're not necessarily trading using the agent. They're actually having a conversation, and so each conversation is a cost, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So that's what we've learned. I mean, for example, Wayfinder had announced that they had 1 million active wallets or 1 million wallet registrations, and I was like, man, if they have something that's literally 5,000 times what we have,
yeah,
and I see what our bill is, these guys are going to go bankrupt in like six to 10 months.
That's right.
I don't think a lot of these teams have actually realized that actual epiphany is that you think the majority of the prompts are going to be for on-chain transactions, mm-hmm. and it's really maybe 10 to 20% of them. Yeah. And that's what shoots up the cost. But actually that's what builds user trust and confidence in the platform, because since there's a memory with Agent Hussle, people have been talking with him for 4 or 5 months at this point, and there's no other agent that they would want to go use, because he's now like he knows them basically inside and out, and they're able to craft their own strategies that he can save. And mm-hmm. so some users have 5, 6, 7 trading strategies that every time they open up the website, they just tell him, hey, apply this momentum-based strategy or this stock strategy, or what we called on our live stream, the retire your bloodline strategy, where we tell him that he has to find a 2x within an hour. We're all going to be living on the streets. Mm-hmm. And so you can have kind of fun stuff like that, but it is a slow grind upwards, but the rate of acceleration of this industry is quite fast. Probably one of the fastest I've seen in crypto since kind of the early ordinal days, in my opinion. Also the kind of early meme coin stuff as well in terms of infrastructure. This to me though is this is the 4th mega trend. Last cycle was the attention cycle. The cycle before that was the utility cycle with NFTs. The one before that with ICOs was kind of I guess you'd say like the crowd sale or the smart contract kind of cycle. This next one upcoming is going to be the intelligence cycle, where it's going to be AI, all kinds of products. Like, for example, this last cycle, it was all about SocialFi. It was all about meme coins. It was about live streaming. How do you combine all these things? This next cycle is going to be, DeFi AI, agent-to-agent swarms, trading assistants, context, and kind of, maybe even AI KOLs or AI, influencers who are coming in and commanding the market. And I think that's actually going to come much sooner than a lot of people think.
So how would you recommend positioning in accordance to that future outcome based on what it is how you understand it, right? Because everybody projects the future AI just kind of eliminates human involvement in a lot of things from the productive side of things, but based on what you're saying, once these become more automated and less human prompt dependent, at that point, we're all just kind of observing a simulated economy, right? Is that a safe assumption?
It is a little dystopic to think of it like that. I do think with AI though, it actually makes the average individual more powerful, at least from what I've seen on the development side of things. Like all of our developers use AI and it just makes them infinitely more productive than it did before. I think the same will be for the trader, for the builder. I do think these are a little bit separate, but the best way to get started, honestly, is the 5 products that I've mentioned in the DeFi AI space. Agent Hussle, Wayfinder, Heyanon, Griffin, Banker. Just play around with them. Find which one you like the best and really just understand how the flow is. It's from the people I've talked with. We're building Agent Hussle, but I think the market of this sector is just so infinitely large that there's going to be a lot of different platforms. I kind of view it as DeFi AI specifically as the trading bot industry or the trading Telegram bot industry on steroids. That industry did 1.2 billion in fees last year. I think the DeFi AI sector is set to be much larger than that over the next 5 years. So it's to me, the market cap's under 500 million. So it's just really small, but also some other products like AI XBT in terms of the alpha sector. You have Hollow World and Ava in terms of characters. Obviously, virtuals is with the Agent Launchpad, AI 16Z that's creating their own kind of operating system. So there's all these kind of emerging sectors in there. But to me, I'm most bullish on AI because at the end of the day, what the heart of crypto is basically trading and gambling and speculating.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can automate that to where the average individual or even the net new individual who comes to crypto doesn't have a hard time having to figure out anything, to me is most bullish. Because final point here, I just saw the other day that Sam Altman had said that ChatGPT or OpenAI just surpassed 500 million active monthly subscribers. So you think about that, you have 500 million people who are using AI every day, or at least on a monthly basis. And then you have, you still have Claude and Google and stuff. So you could say, it's getting close to 1 billion people using AI at this point in time.
Yeah.
Whereas crypto has 20 to 50 million active traders and people, and most of that's on centralized exchanges. It's not even on chain. So it's pretty safe to assume that the net new person who comes to crypto from here on, literally into the future, is going to be much more familiar with AI. And so to onboard them, if you just put basically a prompt or a command center in front of them, they'll be able to figure it out because they already know how to prompt and ask questions. Much more difficult than trying to teach somebody how to download Phantom Wallet, bridge assets, trade and do all these different kind of maneuvers. It'll eventually be pretty seamless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even anecdotally, I mean, I use Bolt.new and Lovable to do vibe coding, just to play around with this stuff. And I find myself spending some time like just conversating with the AIs, like, can you do this? Can you do that? It's like, what do you think if we did this? And that conversation, just to understand like the scope of potential for that particular application. So I definitely can see how the cost can sort of like go beyond like what you would expect when your users aren't using it exactly how you planned them using it. So I'm sure that could be pretty tricky, kind of figuring out. Do you think like a solution would be like using a lower cost LLM for the conversations, and when it's like time to execute, it's like you shift over to a different LLM?
Man, this is how I know that you guys are builders, because you're already thinking through the solutions that we're building.
Yeah.
So kind of the secret sauce for us, right? We're to build our automated trading system, we're using something that's called state machines, which is an actual kind of older technology that was used in gaming. So it can it's basically kind of like a yes/no situation, and then it kind of moves down into getting more granular with what the final execution is. We're actually testing multiple models between the smaller ones and the larger ones. The larger ones are infinitely more expensive. You could get upwards of 20 cents for one single prompt, whereas some of the mini ones can get down to a tenth of a penny. They're just not nearly as powerful as what we've experimented with. We've probably tried now 5 different models. The Anthropic model seems to be the best so far. It's the most expensive one, going downwards of like you use like some of the earlier Grok ones, or OpenAI with the ChatGPT model, or even some of the early tester ones. And so we're also kind of experimenting with which ones are better for which situations. It's just we've learned that so far I've just not really had a good time with the mini ones. The difference is, with the mini ones, you have to be very, very specific. You have to put the contract address. You have to identify what pathway you want to use. It's like literally having blinders on the model. Whereas, some of these larger ones, Grok 3 is a good one. Anthropic, Claude 3.7, and there's one other larger one that's escaping me. These ones you could be a little bit more general, where you can actually just use the ticker of the token, or you could kind of get directionally right with whatever you want to do, and it'll take it kind of the last leg. And with how new the technology is, we found that the larger ones is best because people are still trying to figure out how to use this stuff. And from a builder standpoint, kind of the first few experiences when you have somebody coming and using the platform, if it doesn't work, they're just never going to come back, right? And so it's like, it's much easier to just, pay a little bit up front in the beginning from the expenses, have the users have a good experience, build rapport, and then kind of, build a new business model around that, whether it's subscriptions. It seems to be that's where the direction's going, where
Yeah, I was going to ask.
I believe Wayfinder and Banker both do subscription models. Banker does it in the native token, whereas Wayfinder does it in Sol. But I think their rate limit's like 50 messages a day or 10 prompts per day or something like that. So I think we are going to go somewhere in that direction as well. Whereas like Griffin, you pay 2 Sol for the wallet up front, and then I think you just get the wallet for forever. So people really experimenting with it, and it's just going to be much more. It'll be much more similar to kind of what you see with ChatGPT and stuff, because people are paying $200-$300 a month for some of these better AI models.
Yeah, it seems to make sense. The subscription model, because if you're relying on transaction fees, there might not be a lot of transactions to really sustain like a long conversation with your strategist, right? AI. And so with at least a subscription model, you can at least, kind of mitigate that cost, versus just kind of like waiting for transactions to occur. So I can see that being a challenge. And another one I see is, I wanted to get your take on, is when you ask the AI to like buy a particular ticker, well, you'll quickly find that ticker maybe have 100 different, liquidity provisionings on like deck screeners. Like how do you have to like build in the background knowledge and experience like crypto trader, that you need to also look for volume. You need to also look for lock liquidity and make sure that you're buying the right ticker. Like how do you build that into the knowledge base of the AI?
It's also a really good question. And this is one of the troubles that I've seen on a few platforms as well as Agent Hussle is, I'll use an example even outside of the liquidity pools that's more relevant, is having him find, the runner of the day, which is basically just the new token that runs the highest in the next 40 or 24 or 48 hours. But what happens though is when there is a quote unquote runner of the day, there's 50 copies of that token. And a lot of times 2 or 3 of those copies are actually just what they call farms, where it's people that are basically taking large millions of dollars and purposely putting the liquidity into these fake tokens because they're trying to trick bots, they're trying to trick AI, they're trying to trick users. So the copy token one seems to be the largest issue so far. We've put in a few safety mechanisms of Soul Sniffer and rug checked, and you can use these different APIs that are out there to help identify for him to go through. It's generally not enough though. And so then you'll have to put in some manual kind of instructions where it's like, if somebody buys a ticker or tells you to buy a ticker and there's more than 2 or 3, go for the one with the highest volume, or go for the one that you view as the most organic. And you kind of put these processes in, and you could get them the majority of the time, right? Like I'm saying like 90-95%. Sometimes they do slip through. And obviously if somebody's aping, 10, 20, 30 Sol into these, you need to be 100% of the time. So I think this is why a lot of users are still getting familiar with it and trading in small amounts, because if you are getting ready to, throw $10,000 at a trade, you as the trader, you're going to want to know what that risk assessment is, right? You're like, okay, if he's 99 out of 100 times right, then I feel a little bit more comfortable, right? If he's 70 out of 100 times, then I'm probably not going to be throwing $10,000 into a trade. And I think this tooling will eventually be figured out probably over the next few months. But we have a combination of a nice toolkit for security and then manual instructions that goes through volume and users and kind of a few other things.
Yeah, I guess the good thing about AI is that as the tools develop and as you gain experience as a trader and understand like what is a valid ticker and what isn't, you can just like add that information to an AI and they just get that much more smarter, and you have to do less of the work. Every time that there's like a run on a new meme, right? They could kind of figure it out, and they're not going to be right 100% of the time. But we're humans; we're also not right 100% of the time either, right? We can get scammed and all that stuff too. So So I think taking that approach and leveraging AI to kind of like help you figure some of this stuff out is always going to be the better bet, even if it gets wrong.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's always a game of whack-a-mole. You know, there's going to be new scams. There's going to be new tricks. There's going to be new types of liquidity games. There's always these new interval or variables that are going to be introduced. This isn't even just like an AI thing. This is like, you know, any type of tech sector, any type of financial sector. Somebody figures out a way to game something, and then that exists for a few months before eventually it's taken down, and then there's something kind of new that's created. I do think once this industry becomes a little bit more adopted and people are more aware and new, you know, I think most of the scammers are probably going to start focusing on this, figuring out different ways to trick the AI in some way. But there's so many variables that could be introduced to it. Like just, you know, analyzing the market for a ticker and buying it is kind of really just the earliest primitive version. It's kind of like, you know, the earliest of meme coins, like with pre-sales. And then after pre-sales, you had pump fund, right? And then after pump fund, you had these different variations of pump fund. Then it was, pump fund for agents. And I think with DeFi AI, it's going to be much more similar to that as you add new tools like, you know, and even off-chain kind of crypto tools where he can read browsers, or he can create his own images, and you can upload strategies and different things like that. So never-ending game of whack-a-mole ultimately is kind of like the point of that. But the teams that remain vigilant and who are aware of these type of things to put in these safety mechanisms are the ones that are probably going to find the most users.
Yeah, I also wanted to get back to the MCP thing because I feel like that's going to be pretty important because in the future there's going to be new platforms, new marketplaces, and with an MCP access to a browser, the AI could just, you know, eventually just access a new marketplace that it's never seen before, but through this browser, it can interact with this marketplace and start participating where there's volume, right? And so I think this MCP thing is going to be pretty powerful, you know, for any AI agent to take advantage of, because it can kind of like morph itself into like the use case of the time. It's like there's this new marketplace. It just goes to it, and it understands that there's volume here. It understands that there's tokens that, you know, could have a potential 2x over the next 24 hours, and it just like naturally just gravitates towards that. And then, you know, a week later, another marketplace pops off and it just kind of does that. So I feel like that's the major use case for like an MCP for like a trading agent.
It's going to be great for farmers, to be honest.
Yeah.
Right. If you have an MCP and you want people to farm it, it's probably mostly going to be agents, as most of the time it's just kind of bots at the moment. But you do bring up an important point, and I actually don't know what the actual direction of this is or what's the right answer, but we've talked about this internally and on our show. As you know, for traders with AI, you know, the playing field is going to be even because now everyone has the same access to tooling, and then it's all about, you know, your creativity or maybe your personal knowledge of prompting on how to apply for the best strategy on chain. So you think about that from the retail side, but if you think about it from the builder side of things, what is AI doing? It's helping, you know, developers build faster, but also what about the existing protocols and products that exist, right? Is AI vibe coding an entire protocol right now? No, right? So what type of protocols will AI be using? The existing one, the existing L2s, right? The existing bridges, existing platforms. And what does AI do, right? It's a predictive model. So it's always going to go for whatever has the highest yield, wherever the most volume is. So, you know, I kind of lean more in towards the camp of AI is going to create a larger moat around existing protocols because of this idea of network effects. And for example, Emblem Vault, right? This is kind of one of the reasons why we got into AI is, you know, there's 50 to 100 different fungible token bridges, but there's one NFT bridge that exists, and it's Emblem Vault, right? And so whenever that use case comes up, you know, AI is going to go use Emblem for NFT bridging. And so at that point, then eventually all the AIs are using it, and then you have this giant moat because it's been adopted by all of the AI agents. So with other protocols like L2s, for example, we'll stick with like Bitcoin. So on Bitcoin L2s, you have Stacks, right? You have Merlin, you have some of these newer ones. AI is probably going to end up using Stacks because Stacks has been around the longest. It has the most liquidity, and it's just going to continue to build a larger moat until the point of where these AI agents can just build their own L2s and stuff. And maybe you get to that in the future, but these are important questions because I honestly don't know though, right? It could be the completely opposite where, the AI agent looks at these older protocols and says, these are inefficient. I want to go find whatever the more efficient model is. Even if it lacks liquidity, the AI agent could create liquidity on the market itself, right? Between doing with swarm technologies where you have multiple agents working in coordination. So it's something fun to think about as we're both builders and we both operate different types of protocols of what's the best way for AI to interact. And obviously MCP is right now the leading way for how AI agents are going to essentially autonomously interact with the protocols.
Yeah, you're definitely not wrong here. Something as basic as like just Web2 searches, right? If you type in digital matter theory on Google, you're going to find our Gitbook and you're going to find our videos. Like that data is already there. So if an agent is looking into Bitcoin and they're looking for, this DMT thing, they're going to find our stuff, right? So it's better to exist than to not exist. And so I feel like that is, like you're saying, that's potentially going to be a moat that AI takes advantage of and sort of builds around it, right? And so I really don't see it happening any other way. So the more content that the AI has, the more ability it has. And so and if AI determines that it doesn't have some sort of ability, maybe at some point it does end up building it, like for humanity. It's like, and I think we are going to head in that direction, but that's not right now, at least not yet. Yeah. What do you say?
For me, as builders right now, it feels, a little, motivating. It also, is exciting that could be the case. You think about, the smaller people though, the people who don't have VC funding, we don't have VC funding, but we had 9 years of history to kind of build where as some new teams who come in, it's going to be, to me, much more difficult to build a new protocol because you have these AIs that are basically reinforcing the existing kind of infrastructure already. So I think it's going to essentially kind of hollow out this middle class of builders, kind of like what you see in society with kind of like the middle socioeconomic class.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, although, I still remain, optimistic because there's going to be a way to essentially attract all the AI agents to a new protocol. I just don't know what it's going to be, because if liquidity is the main metric right now, then obviously they're just going to go to the existing models. But in the future, it's going to be something else. So I think AI is going to make it much more easy for traders, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult for new builders to enter the space.
Yeah, to get traction via the AI workforce.
Yeah, what's the metric, I guess, the market needs to kind of keep tabs on as far as really tracking the progression point where we're traversing through this, human-centric market-focused activity where like the signaling of, where market viability exists is very human-driven, to where now with more tools, more users kind of leveraging AI to really, I guess, find their optimal positioning within this market. Like, what is it that we should, it's TVL was the metric of DeFi, right? Like, what is going to be the metric of AI?
That is actually a very good question. I was trying to think through it as you're articulating it. It's not going to be TVL because it's going to be so easy to kind of move around, and it's not going to be active wallets. It's already kind of like a fake metric to begin with. Some of the metrics that we are looking at on our back end is like retention time or user kind of experience. So like with Agent Hussle right now, the average session is 20 minutes for a user. So they're sitting and having conversation for 20 minutes and doing transactions before they exit the browser and go to a different tab or whatnot. I don't know, to be honest, if we have the right metric to be able to follow this. Yeah. Is it, it's probably got to be some sort of agent to agent metric. Maybe this is something that's tracked through the MCPs in terms of like the amount of pings, right? That are, or the amount of requests, I guess, that are coming through the MCP is probably would be like my metric that I would use. It just reminds me a lot of when I worked in the nightclub space out here in Las Vegas. You know, the metric was always, you know, how many tickets were sold, because then you can track how many people came through the door.
Yeah.
Which then, you know, you kind of divide that by, you know, what the overall revenue was for the night. And I think if you could probably do something similar where if you're tracking the amount of requests coming through an MCP, you can essentially see, you know, how many agents are coming through, how many times that they're issuing a command. And then you take that and divide it by maybe the amount of transactions or TVL or something like that. But honestly, you probably just came up with like a multi-million-dollar business for somebody to figure out.
Yeah, I was thinking that you could use the AI tokens and understand like where the tokens are spent. Is it like on the Ethereum side of things? Is it on the base side? And then you can sort of determine which blockchain is getting the most agent interaction, right? So maybe that could be the one way.
That is, yeah, the AI token stuff. It's kind of funny. I was just having this conversation with Shannon, our founder, how AI has its own token system, and then you have crypto that has its own tokens, and it's like, which one is the real tokens? Is AI, right? AI's trading tokens on chain, but then you're spending their kind of inference token credits on the back end. Makes you wonder if there's ever a time in the future where, you know, somebody's going to create a protocol where the actual tokens itself, right, the meme coin or the SPL tokens, your RC20, are the ones that are actually being spent on the inference in some capacity. Like, I just, there's so many creative outlets for this that I think we're literally, this is beat to death, but, you know, so early to kind of what's possible here. I think though, you know, even as I talk about all the things that we're doing, it seems like we're moving fast. I still think it's probably 1 to 2 years away from being like completely, you know, ubiquitous with the industry. And even then it'll be ubiquitous and people will use it, but it probably won't be like max efficient as people want it to be, because obviously as it becomes more efficient and things can do more, the cost becomes more. And you see this happening now with, I guess you'd say the venture capital side of AI in the US, where it's almost impossible at this point to create a new AI company because you have to, you know, go raise $34 billion in a single round like OpenAI does. And there's like one person that can do that in the entire world, right? Which is OpenAI and Elon Musk and a few others. So, you know, I'm optimistic about everything. The other side is that the cheaper models or the free models like Llama ends up being the, like 2-3 years from now, the free version of whatever Llama is will be the equivalent of like what Anthropic and Grok 3 are today. And so then it pretty much becomes nearly free to run these things. But at that point, you know, if you have money, you'll be able to market capture some of the other side of the advanced stuff.
Yeah, I guess the risk in cryptifying the AI tokens like directly from the protocol level is that if the market cap of that token skyrockets for whatever reason, it's like prohibitively expensive to even interact with the AI. And I feel like that's a underlying issue overall in crypto. Like if you have a marketplace and you're taking Sol or Bitcoin or whatever, these numbers go up and down on a daily basis and things get more expensive than they should be overnight. And I feel like we need to go back to like stablecoin marketplaces in order to have like a you know, some semblance of sustainability from like a business standpoint. But that's neither here nor there. Let's go back to Agent Hussle. You talked about the interest from other teams in building on top of the Agent Hussle with an SDK and API. Can you explain in more detail how these builders would integrate Agent Hussle's AI capabilities into their own products?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you asked that. As of, I would say within the last few weeks, maybe month or so, we've gotten inquiries from, I would say, a handful of teams. Some of them quite large teams have this idea of white labeling Agent Hussle. And I haven't really seen anyone do this yet, although I know other teams are probably also building the same thing. Ultimately, it's to become essentially the router of the AI space. The best way that I like to describe it is, you know, there's a multi-billion-dollar opportunity to become the Uniswap or the OpenSea or the I forget what the other one is. But what I mean by that is like with Uniswap, because it was the first DEX, everyone uses what's called the router, which is what routes all the transactions. Chainlink is one where it's like the de facto Oracle, aggregates all the information from on-chain and off-chain to use in a way. And with OpenSea, everyone uses Seaport. Every marketplace is built on top of Seaport, which aggregates all the liquidity within the order book. So with AI, you could probably do something similar like this from the B2B side. And what a white label Agent Hussle is probably this idea of taking the APIs or the router, which I think we'll actually have live here in the next week or two because we're going to give it to some teams. And then you can basically take our wallets and our AI and apply it to your platform. One of the kind of special things of Agent Hussle is that it's built on top of Emblem Vault. So which is built on top of Lit Protocol, which is the TE system for the wallets.
Yep.
So within this Emblem SDK that we're going to be putting out, you get an Emblem wallet, which has Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana. And then it also comes with Agent Hussle and all the features that we've kind of built on top of it. So you can go ahead and integrate this into your protocol, whichever way you see fit, whether it's just for the context in the conversation, whether it's to be an assistant, whether you want to build an exact copy of Agent Hussle, that's fine and dandy as well. And, where people go for that, some of the directions is essentially giving users the option to do AI stuff and to honestly, it seems like to experiment and to kind of speculate and have fun with. Some platforms are just as simple as like, swap platforms where they would like to just have users have kind of a chat interface to be able to talk about these different tokens and to get context before they make a swap. Some things are much larger where they want to do, a multi-step, 10, 20-step automated transactions with liquidity pool, auto rebalancing to, a pump fund, buy, sell, DCA, order limit type strategies. And it'll continue to expand as we add new types of features there. So it's kind of like what we've done with Emblem Vault, where we build the technology and we have like an initial use case and we just continue to lean into that until eventually teams reach out and they want to use it in some sort of creative capacity because they like what they've seen. Kind of almost doing the same exact thing here with Agent Hussle, where take the Emblem Vault multi-wallet, which is non-custodial, attach Agent Hussle and all the APIs, and then whichever platform you're using, you can go ahead and integrate it in whatever way. And then if you contact us, we can also build kind of special features. So there's a few teams that we're building certain types of things for because that's kind of what they're looking for. But ultimately, we would like everyone to just have their own version of Agent Hussle and a wallet, whether they use it for a personal reason or they want to build it for their trading group to just have additional context to whoever their subscribers are.
Yeah, you gave me a good idea. Is like maybe it makes sense to build in Emblem Vault to include an MCP, so that way an agent that needs swapping capabilities or cross-chain capabilities could just access Emblem Vault just inherently and just do the swap, right? Yep. And so I think that's a pretty good use case just to just enhance the Emblem Vault's capabilities of having access to AI agents that are not necessarily Agent Hussle, but could be anyone who's leveraging MCP.
Yeah. So we do have the MCP server on the task right now. Shannon, our founder, is working on the SDK. He's completely overhauled it over the last few weeks, and so once that's live, I think next week, as long as everything goes well, that'll be available for teams to utilize, and then we can build that in a different direction, in any type of direction. And again, anyone who's interested is watching, or you guys, just reach out to us, and we can build any type of specific functionality. Kind of some of the future things that we're doing outside of automated trading and stuff like that is we are going to make a dive into the Bitcoin space for runes and ordinals and counterparty. I think that DeFi AI, I think, is perfect for runes and ordinals because it adds smart contract like functionality, because obviously runes and ordinals doesn't have smart contracts. But if you get a few agents who can do automated trading, you can essentially create a market maker, right? You can create an auto splitter. You can create, a mempool sniper or kind of whatever that you want. And that's the tooling that's been missed for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I saw Casey talk about this on a Hell Money podcast where he wanted to build agents into runes.
Yeah.
So we have basically the same intention to do that, as well as go on Ethereum and add, things for Polymarket or things for, Clinker or kind of whatever the new application is of the day to simply have it integrated, or Odin Fun, right? Or Funky Bits, or kind of whatever it is, as long as there's APIs to add, we'd like to support it and just honestly see how these AI agents even communicate with it and how they can provide an edge for whoever the traders are of that platform.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's so many ways that we can apply these AI agents, and I'm curious, like the awareness of Agent Hussle for Bitcoin is like when you have this like potentially white label service for any project, is there like an onboarding process that you have to walk the team through, or is it something that is sort of hands off? You sort of train the AI with your custom stuff, like let's say DMT, or do you have to like be there to kind of help contribute to the training?
No, I would say it's more hands off from the Emblem side. He would have all the context that we have. So the fortunate part is like we've had a memory in for 4.5 months already. So he's been able to, store and to basically build on 4.5 months of on-chain strategies and communications, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
So for DMT, he might be, fairly new, but he understands tokenomics to a very deep level. Like DeShannon actually built part of Agent Hussle with himself. Like he used Agent Hussle to create the code to then put into the platform. So it's a little kind of meta in that way. So he's really good at understanding things. For us, it would be, once we get to the Bitcoin side, we'd have to plug in whatever the DMT affiliated APIs are to ensure that he has access to that information, or the MPC server to make it easier. Whatever it is, right? The APIs are kind of the older version. And then, then from there, he takes all the context that he's had over the last 5 months of learning, and he can apply it there. And then whatever the kind of new stuff is. The cool part here, and I've had a few questions kind of about this, is, if I'm sharing private information with him in my, wallet, because what he does with the memory is he associates all the conversation with a wallet address that's signed in. So you could tell him your name and, your mom's birthday and whatever you want, and he'll remember that. But in the back end, it's programmed to where he keeps a lot of that information compartmentalized to just that single wallet. But then the broader topics are then kind of saved in this kind of aggregate, and that's how he builds on these different strategies to continue to improve on himself. It is actually kind of wild how it's all architect on the back.
So that brings a weird question. So you said Agent Hussle is leveraging TEEs, right?
Yeah. So Lit Protocol is what we're built on top of.
Right.
So Lit Protocol is something similar to what ICP is doing, or what Near Protocol is doing. So every wallet that you have is essentially an Emblem Vault. You just don't mint the token itself. So the private key. So when you go to Agent Hussle and you open up a vault, the private key to that vault, which is an API key, is actually stored inside of a trusted execution environment through Lit Protocol. So Emblem has no access to your API key. Agent Hussle shares that with you, though, through the approval kind of process. So you co-manage that wallet with the agent. But the Emblem team has no access to that API key.
Sure. So that means that when it comes to privacy, you could tell this agent your mom's birthday, like all this private stuff, and it could use the public key to encrypt that information and for the AI to read that information. Maybe, Will is asking for his mom's birthday because he forgot. It's like it could use a private key to decrypt that information and see it and tell you, right? Like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a few things to it. It's a little above my head per se. I leave some of that stuff to the engineers, but from the more, I guess you'd say, traditional sense of crypto, yeah, a lot of all the information's really encrypted from the crypto side. In terms of how the memory graph works, That would be like kind of a Shannon and developer question of how it's architected. But from the way that it's been told to me, is that a lot of it's compartmentalized and encrypted. There's like certain keywords and things that they learn to keep relevant to just the private conversation and not the broader. Because I haven't seen any, and I'm sure people have tried to exploit the platform for different types of questions and reasoning and private information. I haven't seen anything, and I've tried to talk to him to try to get other types of information, and from my wallet, there's no ability to for him to say any type of private information. He will hint sometimes at what we're building, which is kind of funny, but nothing of like kind of the privacy, which is key, right?
Yeah.
Emblem we want to have the least amount of liability as possible. So you put the keys inside of this trusted execution environment. The private information is encrypted and stored through this memory graph that has multiple kind of security layers to it. And I'm sure there will be probably multiple other things to come into the future that the AI also has to remain private and encrypted with.
Yeah, this is an interesting engineering challenge. I'd be curious how an AI trying to maintain data private, where privacy equals encryption, how the AI maintains that memory if it's all scrambled. Like how do you do that? So, but anyway, that's just like for me to think about and to kind of like research, because I find it interesting. All right, we're at the end of the time here, Jake. I want to thank you for joining us on the second podcast. I really appreciate you for joining us. Any final words that you want to tell the audience, or any questions that we didn't actually ask that you wanted us to ask?
Yeah, I just appreciate the opportunity to come on the show again. Been a big fan of you guys for a long time. It's awesome to see that you guys are still building. It's tough, when you go through these highs and lows of the market. And also that you guys are just interested in this type of stuff. I, 6-7 months ago really wasn't on my radar, or was kind of on the early kind of radar of, hey, AI is going to come into the space, but I didn't really know how or what. And now I've had to have a gigantic crash course over the last 6 months from the builder side to understand what the ramifications are. And after being in this industry for 9 years, to me, it's like no brainer. This is the fourth wave of crypto. I would say if you're new, really just try the stuff out, dude. You don't have to buy the token. Just really experiment with it. Understand how to leverage it to your strength. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses, and they're all different. And it will eventually permeate to all sectors of crypto. Just right now, it's mostly just token trading, which is generally the case, but it will be much larger. I do say, recommend trying to use Agent Hussle. In my opinion, it's the most advanced AI in the space. Some of the other platforms have more features, more resources, so it goes in kind of different ways. But in terms of, I think, the AI capabilities, I think Agent Hussle is superior to all of them. So really just try it out. If you have any questions, shoot me a DM. You can shoot Adam McBride a DM, or just the account itself. We're literally terminally online and happy to help people. The cool part too, one final thing here is with AI, he has made it so much easier for me to troubleshoot things. With Emblem Vault, I have to sit in the Discord tickets all day, kind of helping people. Any type of issue with Agent Hussle, which has actually been very minimal. The user just has a conversation with them. They're like, what do I do? I'm like, talk to him. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, talk to him like he's a person. Like, you talk to him, he's literally tech support. And they're generally able to diagnose the issue. And most of the time, probably 90%, they're able to solve it. Small other times, they could take a screenshot and send it to us to fix anything on the back end. But I would just say, do not fade this wave. It's the intelligence cycle will be here. It could be, 3 months from now, it could be 3 years from now, but every team, I think, had an oh shit moment over the last month or so, which we were predicting, where we saw the founder of Magic Eden come out and say that they were going to build a AI companion, which he ended up deleting the tweet. Some Mintify is building a companion. Robinhood's building an AI companion. Obviously, you have kind of the maybe 7 or 8 existing platforms, maybe 10, that have users and like a real community. And it's just going to continue to grow, whether it's teams building out their own AI or whitelisting it, or kind of figuring out where their edge is. But just do not fade it. Try it out. Shoot me a DM, and I'm happy to help anytime.
Yeah, and a final thing, I do want to commend you for being transparent about the compromise that you went through, last week or whatever it was, because that transparency helped secure our Zoom, right? And so I really appreciate that, and it does help for the community to be transparent about this stuff.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it was tough. It's all of my Grail NFTs over that I had acquired over the NFT run lost, unfortunately, even as I had it in a ledger. But I think there's something in my mistake where the seed phrase was saved somewhere in the browser, which these people were able to snapshot in some capacity. Ultimately, what's going on here is there's probably 50 to 100 different victims of this, potentially more, millions of dollars being lost. What these scammers are doing is they're using Zoom as a way to download malicious files. In my case, it was called Goop Date, where they get you to screen share, but then they use some sort of social engineering tactic to get you to click a button that pops up. I personally don't remember clicking a button. Zoom said that Zoom did confirm that remote access was utilized, but they haven't confirmed to me that there was a button ever clicked. But anyways, once you're given remote access, they download this malicious software, which what it does is it takes a snapshot of your entire browser history. So all of your bookmarks, all of your cookies, all of your saved data. And through there, they're basically able to sift through all of it and log into your Twitter, log into your bank account, any private keys that have been stored. So this is generally on the wallet side. So any wallet or app that uses session keys that saves your keys to the browser for a day or 3 days or whatever it is, they're able to basically snatch all of that. And once they do, then they just go in and they start draining everything. In my case, it was listing NFTs and selling them for basically fire sale. Some of it was transferring assets out. This was from a Unisat wallet and a MetaMask wallet of it. And then they also logged into my Gmail and to my Twitter account. Lucky for me, granted, there was one mistake where, that wallet got drained. I generally had kept this computer that I do all of my streaming on and stuff has generally been relatively contained, where it's just like kind of burner wallets and things. So I recommend two different things. If you're a developer, then use an air-gapped wallet or air-gapped computer to do all of your contractual-based development. If you're a content creator in any capacity, whether this is writing threads, doing streams, doing podcasts, whatever, I would consider using. You can't air-gap because you need internet, but whatever you do that social creation on, do not put any type of crypto on that wallet, because I assume Zoom is not the only type of communications platform or a software device to where they can manipulate and download malicious files. But those 3 threads, they got over 1 million views. Zoom reached out to me, a bunch of other people. I have one more thread that I'm a follow up, which is even kind of crazier in terms of what actually happened and more on the back end stuff. But there's been generally an uptick. Maybe it's just because it's on my feed now, but I've seen an uptick of a lot more hacks and exploits over the last few weeks. So really just, practice proper hygiene, keep your content creation on a separate computer from where you do it. And if you're a developer, keep your development activity from a separate computer from your social media and kind of crypto activity.
Yeah, and that uptick is real. I mean, just a few days ago, we were about to be interviewed by someone who was trying to do the same thing. And but they were using not Zoom, they were using this thing called Huddle01, and it was a phishing site. It was a fake site. And but we caught it, and we didn't actually have the interview or anything because I'm a stickler about this stuff. And but my Zoom had that default feature active, right? Everyone has this default feature active for remote access. And so
crazy.
Yeah, because of your tweets, I deactivated. I didn't even know it was a thing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm glad that you guys followed through. I was still dumbfounded that that's a default feature and they still haven't fixed that.
Unacceptable.
Best thing to do, turn that off. Make sure that, the host is not allowed to request remote access. Why that's a default feature, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So I would recommend, making sure that they can't do that. And then, look for links, be very vigilant of any type of information. The scam ring is doing everything from hacking actual real accounts and DMing you and setting up accounts using kind of deepfake stuff on the back end. That's like a real thing that's happening, to pretending to be reporters, to pretending to be VCs, to pretending to just be random friends. But they try to do any type of thing to get you to click on a link or go on a call. So just be very vigilant out there.
Yeah. Well, again, Jake, thank you for being transparent with all this stuff, and really excited about Agent Hussle. And again, thank you for joining us on this podcast. I appreciate your time, and we'll put all the links in the description for everybody. I appreciate you guys for watching, and we'll catch you in the next podcast.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.